Hey guys, this is part 5 of the perfect walkthrough for Unreal. I'm just going to skip through this because there's really nothing to see here. It's basically just another passage map.
Listen, my boy, we've got the style and fashion in the place. Breaking it down to the hot scene. If you know what I mean. Hear me now. Now check out the wicked inspiration vibe.
Okay, after passing through the Spire village, we come upon the legendary Spire by Sept 1. Now, this map certainly has some awe, and makes a great use of conceptual grandness from the outside. And unfortunately, for some reason, the interior of the map had to be 80% hallways, and that's not a good thing. I mean, most of the time you aren't even fighting monsters, you're trying to figure out where the hell you are in a dark hallway. Likewise, there is little story implementation. I don't know about everybody else, but the Spire left me to wonder about its background, of which there is little detail. As much as the Spire takes advantage of a conceptual grandness, again I say the inside is ultimately appalling, mostly because there's nothing really interesting in it, and at the end of the day, although the map is quite memorable on the outside, the player generally considers it more of an annoying map. This is mostly due to the scar larvae and tentacle placement, because that's pretty much what all there is in the map, is that and a few gas bags and scar troopers, but, you know, for the most part, the gameplay isn't that interesting. Now, I will admit that this map separates itself from the grungy appearances of some others. It is quite repetitional, but how can that stand out when the interior of the map is basically just a seemingly endless duplication of the same cliché? Now, I don't mean to say that Juan Pancho Equals is a bad mapper, but all mappers have their ups and downs, I guess, and I might take some heat because of this rating, but I gave Atmosphere a 2, Conceptual Grandness a 5, Gameplay a 3, Visual Impact 3, and Storyline 1, which leaves us with an overall rating of 2.5, which is really not enough for a map like this. I really think that this map should have been more than just a letdown.
But I changed. The whole boogie has made me sweaty. Yeah, sweaty. Pasha, can you hear me? Not so bad, smarty pants. Yes. This is a keeper.
Okay, here let me point out that the rising mover was supposed to have a minigun in it. It's not actually an attached mover, so it seems that the minigun basically disappears. I don't quite know the intention of having a minigun there if nobody can get it, but I guess that's what happens when you don't really beta test your maps. The only other thing it does is trigger the elevator, so you might as well activate it. I actually did look in Unreal Editor. There was a minigun there, and then I guess because of the fact that it wasn't an attached mover and it wasn't attached to the mover, that the minigun basically disappeared due to the mover moving it. And that happens every so often with items being moved by movers, that they disappear for some reason. But I will admit that this map is much more interesting and fun when it comes to cooperative gameplay. You know, you had a couple more players in there with you, and it gets more interesting, especially if you've played the original Unreal over and over and over. Now there is a cooperative version of Unreal that you could get. I don't remember what it was called, but I will look it up. Where basically the monsters are more challenging and sort of amplified, and it's not anything special. It's a lot of just health modifications and additional monsters and monsters with different projectiles, but it's still a little bit more interesting than just the original Unreal with just a couple monsters, because it's not really designed for cooperative gameplay. And ES, as in us, we do have a cooperative server on Unreal Tournament. If you want to connect, it's sort of a private server because it's not listed. But if you do want to connect, the IP is 7d.42.179.181, and of course the port is 7777. And again, this is mostly a private server. It doesn't have a password, but it is unlisted. Although we do have a ton of different campaigns you could play on there, and we will be testing a new mod over there in a little bit. That's just if you do want to connect, but you will probably have to download a ton of files, especially if it's on the default map. But if you're willing to wait that a few minutes in order to play cooperatively on, you know, the original Unreal or something, that's up to you. That is another thing that I suppose that the Unreal team didn't really think of, and I suppose that most games didn't really consider that, except for example, Heretic 2 was one of the early ones that really integrated cooperative gameplay, but not to a great extent. Now you see mods like Ven Co-op on Half-Life where it's just like all cooperative gameplay. It's really, and it sort of brings a more interesting style of gameplay to games. I don't know if there's any cooperative gameplay for Unreal 2. I will say that there was a mod a while back. I think I still have it. It was basically an attempt to convert Unreal maps to Unreal Tournament 2004, and there was only one map in the mod. It was the Cheese Renali Temple, but the guy actually did a pretty good conversion. I mean, there's nothing really different from the original Unreal map. And in fact, I might actually, if I have the time, I don't really have anything to do, begin to sort of progress that mod. I don't think it was ever finished.
nothing actually. Hence the name. You have a toy body. Yes. I see that from your toy pants. Yes, you are toy like a tiger. Yes, I would not action. It's not real.
So to the right you'll see some Occupy protesters, and after passing them you will get to a point where you can have the choice to snipe your target after going down the street, but just be careful not to fall. The sniper rifle, by the way, would be my favorite weapon, most especially because of its range, fire rate, and damage. And I have some trouble choosing between it and the flat cannon ultimately. I think that the Unreal Tournament sniper rifle, to be frank, would be my favorite Unreal Tournament weapon, though it is a bit difficult to use at close range. But once more, if your aim is great, then you'll probably rip all your enemies up with it. You can do the same with the Unreal Tournament shock rifle. You could even snipe with it if you're good enough, which is the best way to get accused of using aimbot or something like that. But the sniper rifle has the damage, and that's what I prefer, and I think that ultimately that's what wins the game. I mean, for example, if you have a shock rifle, it takes about 5 to 10 meters to do a shock rifle combo, and by then you could have already taken down your opponent with a good headshot. So what's interesting to see in these next two maps is that they essentially have what the Sunspire lacks. Everything that the Sunspire doesn't have, these two levels basically do have. The idea of this town is a bit creative, and the architecture and atmosphere, though a bit relatable to the Sunspire, do a good job of presenting a unique environment. Now I wonder who thought of the idea of a floating town. Anyways, though the architecture may be simple, the texturing and general surroundings give classic Unreal atmosphere a touch of its own little style. Jeremy Ward does a fairly good job at detailing this map set, and does a great job, to be frank, of distancing the maps from the idea of hallways, hallways, and more hallways. And not only that, but it does give us an idea of what's going on in that area. So it does have well, rather a good amount of translator events. So while the atmosphere and the concept of the environment give the map its memorability, the gameplay isn't anything special, and in fact it has predictable monster placement. But with the introduction of the crawl and numerous star troopers you have to face, there is a clearly visible amount of effort taken by Jeremy Ward to balance the combat and gameplay in these levels. So with regards to detail, this map is a great example of what many Unreal maps should have been.
Would you like a smoke and a pint of game? You know, plus back in the cigarette.
Now I would have to say that Operation Poly did do a better job at emphasizing the conceptual grandness behind the concept of this level set, especially by the outer view of the town and the movers acting as floating chunks beneath the base of the town. Because in those two scenes you really get a sense of where you are at and what it is you're looking at, like, which brings a sense of awe to the player, and that's
Excuse me
what's
while I change.
missing, I
The
guess,
holler
in
boogie has made
this
me
map that
sweaty.
could have been improved.
The tiny one can't take a hint.
And while I'm doing these reviews or going through the walkthrough, or you're looking at something else regarding Unreal mapping, things like that, definitely try to analyze the architecture, especially if you are new to mapping. Notice how the gameplay and the surroundings don't necessarily make it detailed as much as the architecture and things like that make it detailed. I mean, especially notice, and this is a good example again. Now, Polyhaven has a lot of very detailed rooms, and it doesn't do that through gameplay necessarily, or you know, the rooms themselves, but what makes the rooms, like the architecture, what Jeremy Ward does to sort of detail them, make them look like not just a regular box room or something like that, cube. And some examples of what I'm talking about, if you don't exactly know, or I'm being too vague. The arced hallways are good examples. The pillars, the support for the lights, things like that sort of take the plainness out of the room. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, pillars and things like that. But it's something that sort of catches your attention, or the room is sort of focused on. For example, the lighting in this room sort of emphasizes the
tiny one can't take a hint.
The architecture, the pillars and things like that. And it isn't the best example. I mean, I've seen some really complex things, especially in some of the maps in, for example, Aurances does a really great job at sort of complicating the architecture to make it less boring and more eye-catching. And to be honest, I'd have to say that in comparison, Aurances does a better job than any other mapper in the original Unreal of sort of emphasizing architecture and making rooms extremely interesting. And maybe this is mostly because of the fact that this game again is a blend. These sort of design concepts were kind of being developed, and there wasn't much space in computers back then, etc. But you look at Unreal Tournament 3, and although the game overall of Unreal Tournament 3 is horrid, the maps are pretty amazing, and they really show you how far the concepts of conceptual grandness and things like that really developed. I mean, most maps in Unreal Tournament 3, if you've looked at them, are pretty amazing, especially one of them is a capture the flag. It's not face, it's something like that, but it's sort of like in a asteroid field kind of thing. I don't know if it's a custom map or part of the Unreal Tournament 3 default set. Anyway, yeah. And you should do this, especially if you are trying to improve your mapping in any game. Look at the architecture in any game. In Unreal, it's sort of different though, because it doesn't really focus on the walls and things like that. It doesn't focus as much on the textures as much as it does on what you can do with the room to make it less boring. That's just something to think about. Now I think that the crawl are sort of a letdown as well, because they're introduced in the later levels, like the Scar Troopers, which implies that they are supposed to be on the upper part of the monster ladder. Unfortunately, they are basically just walking tentacles with more health. I mean, unless you're fighting 4 or 5 of them, it's not very much of a challenge. I think that they should have at least increased their projectile speed. I think that they should have been something like, for example, the Nally Sorcerer, which is a custom conscript by Chris Giordano, which basically makes the Nallies into fighters instead of having them run around shouting things in a foreign language. I mean, seriously, the Nally Sorcerer script is basically composed of 4 different projectiles and 2 different combative states. So it's almost like you're fighting a mini-boss, except it's rather fun to fight him. I suppose that one of the reasons why the crawl and such monsters are so simple is because Unreal's AI system was sort of still developing back then. In Unreal Tournament, they definitely perfected it. Well, maybe not perfected, but they still did a very good job at making the bots more challenging. I mean, if you go to Unreal difficulty on this, you go through it, and then you right after play a game in Unreal Godlike, you'll definitely notice the difference. Not only, and it's not only because the bots have more, or are more combat ready, I guess you can say, pawns, but because there is much more code, the AI is much more sophisticated, and definitely much faster. And it puts it on an equal level with the player, because now the pawns get to use the same weapons the player does, making them much more deadlier. Of course, for example, the Scar Trooper has the same weapons as the player. The problem seems to be that they aren't as fast as, for example, godlike bots. They don't think correctly, if you will. And that ultimately makes them an easy target. They are basically the same thing as Scar Warriors. They aren't that aggressive when you put them beyond their health level to be aggressive.
The tiny one can't take a hint. Not so bad, smarty pants. Welcome to 1975, Austin Powers and Fire. Oh, yes, this is a keeper. time to say goodbye. Dutch hater! And that's the way, I like it. You see on the sunshine. Excuse me, but I changed. The holler boogie has made me sweaty. Yeah, sweaty. Time to say goodbye. Then there is no pleasing you. Can you hear me? Excuse me, but I changed. The holler boogie has made me sweaty. Yeah, sweaty. Would you like a smoke and a pancake? No? Would you like a cigarette? All right. Cigar and a waffle? No. Pipe and a crepe? No. Bong and a blitz? Macho Man.
Village people.
And now, it is time to say goodbye. The look of it, the taste of it, the smell of it, the texture.
Move it off.